All right, hello there, thrill seekers. This week is Thanksgiving here in the United States of America, so I will probably only be able to do one video this week. So sorry if I'm disappointing any of those of you who, crave your daily fix of my videos. I probably will not be making any more this week, but I thought I would make one today so that you got something to work on. One of my teacher, Nishijima Roshi's, favorite things to say about Buddhism was, Buddhism is just realism. And when I first heard him say this, it really bugged me. And I now have the receipts, as they say, the kids say these days, as to why it bugged me. I've explained this a bunch of times on this channel and in books and other places, but I thought I would do it again because I just found a really good way of kind of approaching this explanation for why that phrase bugged me, but why it doesn't bug me anymore, and why I think he's right. Okay, I just started reading this book, which just came out, called Making Sense of Mind Only, Why Yogacara Buddhism Matters by William S. Waldron. And I haven't gotten through the book, so this is not a review of the book. So anybody who says you can't review a book until you've read the whole thing, you can hold those comments because I'm not about to review it. But what I did come across here is his definition, William Waldron's definition of realism, because he starts out using this word realism in a way that kind of made me think, oh, that's why I didn't like it when Nishijima Roshi would say that Buddhism is just realism. He says, the terms idealism and realism are used in various ways with various meanings. In its most common usage, idealism refers to positions that hold that mind and mental events are the most fundamental reality and therefore objects in some fashion depend on mind, in quotes. Idealism is typically contrasted with realism, which holds that objects exist independently of the mind and that our minds and perceptions are therefore dependent on such objects. In most usages, idealism and realism are opposites. So when Nishijima Roshi used that phrase, Buddhism is just realism, I thought that was the kind of realism he was talking about. But actually, now that I've looked into it more, the word that this author uses, realism, the way he defines realism is, I think, more a definition of the philosophy of materialism. Now, I know a lot of philosophy people still use the terms interchangeably, but Nishijima Roshi did not. So let me give you a couple of definitions of materialism and idealism that I found on the internet. I actually was doing a workout today because I go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and so there you go. At least do that. And while I was at the gym, I watched a couple of videos on the subject, and I copied down what they said about their definitions of these terms. Okay, the first one comes from a video called Realism and Anti-Realism 2, so it's the sequel. It's like Troll 2 or Mad Max 2 or one of those things. Materialism and idealism, and the person who made the video, I'm going to pronounce his name Jan Willem Lindemans. He sounded American in his accent, or I don't know, maybe he didn't. I was doing stuff and listening at the same time, but so he might be Jan Willem Lindemans if he's American, I don't know. Anyway, if he's Dutch, he's going to be Jan Willem. So here's his definition of realism. Realism is about 2 components. First, there is a reality independent of our minds, our thinking. Minds and our thinking, I guess is what he wanted to say. Our thinking is really about this reality. Our beliefs really correspond to this reality. So that's what he calls realism. And to give an example, he says, tables, I guess he's talking about tables here, are part of what philosophers call the external world. Physical objects belong to the external world. It's the world in which we walk every day. The floor on which I'm sitting right now belongs to the external world, and realists kind of suppose that this external world is material, that this table is really made out of stuff, and that this stuff is something different than, let's say, what our minds are made of. Okay? And he further goes on, there really exists some material stuff independently from mind. And this is, he says, a materialist version of realism. So there we get a kind of a clearer sort of pinning down of the two ideas. And he says, idealists deny this. They say there's no such thing as material stuff independent of our thinking. Everything, in a sense, is made of the stuff of the mind, if we want to use the word stuff again. So this table, it only exists insofar as it is thought. So in a sense, it doesn't exist as a material reality. Idealists say reality is fully dependent on the mind, or mind precedes reality. Mind creates reality. Now here is another definition which might be closer to what Nishijima Roshi was looking at, because he did study Marxism to a certain extent. And this comes from a video called Marxist Realism from Fundamentals of Marx. The Fundamentals of Marx is the name of the series this comes from. And Idealism versus Materialism. And that's the full title of the thing. And the people who put this up are called the Marxist Project. Many people outside of Marxism understand materialism to be a word describing excessive obsession with the material. We call someone materialistic when they are too preoccupied with money, possessions, frivolous collectibles. Oh, you can't really see any, but there's some on the shelf, etc. In Marxist theory, materialism in our case refers to a philosophy or world outlook that treats reality as independent of human thought. It places emphasis on the very matter this world is made out of. This definition makes more sense when looking at materialism's philosophical opposite, idealism. Idealists believe that human thought comes first, that the world exists in our minds. Extreme forms of idealism, such as solipsism, believe that the world around us is only real insofar as it exists in our mind. Okay, so there's a couple of definitions. Now, here's a book in which Nishijima Roshi lays out pretty much most of his basic philosophy. It's called To Meet the Real Dragon. You can still find it. I believe now it's only available as a print on demand through Amazon. This is the original printed version from Windbell Publications. Good luck finding one of these. But it's the same book with a different cover now, and you can get it pretty easily. And he has an entire chapter called Idealism and Materialism, which I think is really good if you want to understand his way of viewing these things. Unfortunately for me, in terms of doing this video, he doesn't actually pin down the definition of materialism and idealism in a short way. He doesn't start the chapter, for example, by going, I define idealism as, and then blah, 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 2 sentences, and I define materialism as blah, 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 2 sentences. He doesn't do that. But if you read the entire chapter, you understand how he defines these two things. It's just that he doesn't do it in this neat, tidy way. But he does, near the end of the chapter, provide a nice 1-sentence definition of his understanding of Marxist realism. He defines Marxist realism, editor Brad here, I mean Marxist materialism, now back to me, as being, well, here's how he puts it. If it were possible to explain all phenomena on the basis of matter, there could be no place for Christianity to live. This is part of an ongoing discussion here. But the idea is the possibility to explain all phenomena on the basis of matter would be the just shortest definition I can drag out of this book of materialism as Nishijima Roshi understood it. So when Nishijima Roshi said that Buddhism is just realism, he meant that Buddhism is not idealism and it is not materialism. So his use of the word realism was a word he used to contrast between idealism and materialism. He did not use the word realism to indicate materialism. Now, A lot of people think Buddhism is idealism, and I've been grappling with this as a means in trying to explain why Buddhism is not idealism for a long while. And if you've watched these videos, you've seen me do this and kind of fail time and time again to explain it. But I'm going to try with one other way. We're going to go back to these definitions that I found online, because I think there's a very telling word or two that appears in these definitions that will explain maybe the difference between Buddhism and idealism. He says realism is there's a reality independent of our minds, our thinking, and that our thinking really is about this reality. That's one thing that Buddhism questions, whether our thinking is about the reality that's independent of our minds. Now, here is their definition of idealism from Jan Willem Lindemann. Idealists deny this. They say there's no such thing as material stuff independent of our thinking. That's the word I want you to pay attention to. Everything, in a sense, is made of the stuff of mind, if we want to use that word again, blah, blah, blah. And this Marxist project's version of idealism, let's just read their definition again. Marxist theory, materialism, in our case, refers to a philosophy or world outlook that treats reality as independent of human thought. It places emphasis on the very matter this world is made out of. This definition makes more sense, blah, blah, blah. Idealists believe that human thought comes first and the world exists in our minds. So, when Buddhists talk about mind, they're not talking about thought. And that is a big difference. Every time this argument comes up in Western philosophy, whenever I've seen it, they have characterized idealists as people who believe that the world exists in our thoughts, in our thinking. And when Buddhists talk about mind, I'm going to say it again, I just said it, they're not talking about thinking. So this makes it kind of difficult for us to get into. I believe that in the philosophical stream of which Buddhism comes out of, I just said of twice, I think people understand that mind does not equal thought in general. I think probably people initially have to be taught this. Probably people who are even in Asia and who have kind of been raised in the sort of Asian way of understanding things, the Buddhist and Hindu ways. Of course, some Asians are Marxist these days, but anyway, the Buddhist and Hindu ways of thinking see thought as something that mind does, but they also understand that mind is not thought. So if you want to understand this better, try to get it through your head, as I had to do, that mind and thought are not the same thing. So when Buddhists say the triple world is mind only, which is a chapter title from Dogen's Shobo Genzo, the triple world means the entire universe. It doesn't matter what the three are in the triple, but that's just their way of saying the entire universe. The entire universe is mind only. When Dogen does this chapter, which I've talked about on this channel, and I'm not going to go into in detail, but maybe I will in a future video. When he says the universe is mind only, he doesn't mean the universe is in our thoughts or in our heads, because the head is just another part of material reality, and thought would probably be classified as an aspect of material reality by Buddhists. I'm not sure. I'd have to read up more about Yogacara and see how they file things, but they had a much wider understanding of this term mind. And my favorite quote, which if you've watched this video channel before, you've seen me say a lot, is Dogen's would say, mind is fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles, the sun, the moon, and the great earth. Now, he doesn't mean that they're just our thoughts about those things, but that those things are aspects of mind in this bigger sense. Now, I know I probably haven't solved anything, but maybe I've given you something to think about, that you can think about and argue about with your relatives over Thanksgiving dinner if you're in the United States. I know the Canadians have already had their Thanksgiving, I guess, and that those of you watching me in the rest of the world don't even know what Thanksgiving is, but it's a big deal holiday here in America, and we're doing big deal things for the holiday all week, so I won't be able to make videos, but so this is the video for the week. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you enjoyed it, you can always help support what I do by going to the URL you're seeing below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and my Patreon accounts. Those are my main way of making a living, and I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Okay, I hope they're both in the shot. There's Ziggy and there's FICO. We're dog sitting for FICO right now. And I hope I'm getting them in the shot. Alright, talk to you later, guys. Bye, guys.